The following program is presented by the Metropolitan Library Service Agency.
Hello, welcome to All About Kids, a program focusing on the interests of children and young people and some of the issues affecting them. Cooperation between the public school system and the public library is alive and well in the community of Bloomington. Our guest today, Karolyn Lee, Media Director at Normandale Hills Elementary School, and Kathy Burns, Media Director at Valley View Elementary, will talk with Children's Services Librarian from the Penn Lake Community Library, Phyllis Mattill. They'll be discussing an exciting cooperative program, Bloomington All-Stars. Later on in the program, we'll have a chance to hear some of the Bloomington All-Stars, children representing every elementary school in Bloomington, talk about some of their favorite books.
Hi, Karolyn and Kathy. It's great to have you here today. Karolyn, maybe you'd like to tell us a little bit about how this program got started.
Well, the conception of the whole idea probably started about 3-4 years ago. If you're familiar at all with the Bloomington schools, about 3 years ago we took our schools and went through a dramatic change. We moved all of our 5th and 6th grade students out of our building and put them into one building, therefore having our schools with a K-4 situation. Well, up to this point, all of our schools had participated in the Maud Hart Lovelace, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And our kids had read the books for a number of years. And as we looked at the books now with our K-4 situation, we found that the books were probably a mite too hard for our students, where the reading level was basically fourth all the way up through the 8th, 9th grade level. And we found that with most of our students that we could only participate with only a small fraction of those books. And so we started to sit down and start looking at what we wanted to participate in. All of us are very, very strong promoters of reading in our schools. And we felt the Maud Hart Lovelace was a really neat way of getting our kids to read and to look at a variety of books. Well, at this point now we needed to look at something else and to focus in a new direction. And so all of the media directors met for several times and started talking about what could we do. And at the same time involve the Hennepin County Libraries, because we do work with Penn Lake and Oxbow quite readily. And so we then decided that we wanted to sit down with the two librarians from the two libraries to find out what could we do to promote reading in our schools. And at this point we started looking at some programs. We didn't want it to be competitive because we just feel reading is such a lifelong program that we don't want kids to have to think every time they pick up a book that they're reading for some competition of some sort. And so we looked at a variety of titles. We looked at a variety of ways that we could select titles and how we could go about getting enough titles that would be well-rounded for all of our students to look at. And so after going through a number of lists and spending lots of time, then the conception was finally formed, and then we started to meet with the Hennepin County Librarians, both Oxborough and Penn. We would meet up at Penn sometimes down at Oxborough and take a look at the books that were available for us. And we wanted to make sure that there would be enough both in our schools and in the libraries for the kids to read. And so this is our first year. We went through the titles. We made sure we had a variety of titles for students, everything from science fiction to fantasy to animal stories to all the various categories that we have available for kids to read, so that they would feel comfortable reading the books and that they would also enjoy reading all of them. We went through, and I believe we came up with 10 titles, 11 titles that we really liked. And so, of course, this being our first year, this is the first time we're trying this out. We find with the kids well into the program, we started back in October, that the students have read quite a few of the books, and we're getting a lot of feedback from the students. They're really enjoying it. They're not having trouble finding the books, which we thought maybe they might have, and yet they're they're being able to find them both at Penn Lake and Uxborough as in our own schools. And from there, then the program has been continuing, and Kathy, maybe you'd like to just tell us a little bit about how we're going right now, where our kids are with the program.
Well, at this point, the students are reading the books, and they're getting the books from our media centers and the public libraries. And hopefully they've read enough of the titles that they can make a choice for their favorite. That's the whole idea, is to have the Bloomington 4th grade students choose a book that they feel is their favorite. I know a lot of the teachers have read the books in their classrooms as well. It's really given them a good list to select from for read-aloud titles.
Mm-hmm. Is the voting taking place then? Is that the February, the week of the 18th of February?
It'll be in February, and we've chosen that time to do the voting because it's during Bloomington's I Love Kids Month and also I Love to Read Month.
Okay. And then we're going to top it all off with a party at the Penn Lake Library. All the kids are invited, and we hope a lot of them can come. We're featuring Nancy Carlson, who's not only a nationally recognized artist and author of books, but also a Bloomington resident. Mm-hmm. And she's going to do a program on what goes into the making of a book. The Friends of the Penn Lake Library and the Friends of the Uxborough Library are going to provide treats, so it'll be a real party, and we hope to have a great turnout of all the kids. Do you feel it's really gone over pretty well in your schools?
Yes,
it has.
We find the teachers even coming in and reading the books because the students are talking about it in their classrooms. So they have come in and have tried to sneak a book in if they could, if there's one that has come in, so that they can also have discussions with the kids. And we find the students also are talking amongst themselves. So it'll be really interested. I'm curious how the voting is going to go, because one time they may be talking about Tuck Everlasting, the next day it's a Dollhouse Murders, the next day it's one of the other books. So it's interesting to see the interest that the students have found, and also that they are reading a variety of titles. It isn't just all mystery books, or it isn't just all science fiction. It is a variety of books that they're looking at, and this was our goal, was to expose them to a lot of different types of subjects and books for them to read. And by the way, they are all fiction books at this point. And I think maybe later on, as we look at the program further on, we may take a look at some nonfiction titles and maybe some other titles to go along with it, but at least to give them a start to work with it. But yes, they are excited about it.
Well, it sounds like it's been a good start, and we do hope all the kids will join us on February 23rd, 1991 at 10:30 in the morning at Penn Lake Library.
I'm Anna Hersey from Normandale Hills School. Do you like to be deliciously scared? Then you should read The Dollhouse Murders by Betty Wren Wright. Let me tell you a little about the book. 13-year-old Amy Treller is sent to live with her aunt in an old Victorian house that once belonged to Amy's great-grandparents. Amy discovers an old dollhouse in the attic, which is a replica of the Victorian house she is staying in. Her aunt's behavior is very strange whenever the dollhouse is mentioned, and she won't talk about it or about how Amy's great-grandparents died. Amy is determined to find out how her great-grandparents died. She looks through some old newspapers at the library and learns that they were murdered, but the killer was never found. Then strange things start happening in the dollhouse. Dolls move by themselves, and an eerie light fills the dollhouse parlor at night. Amy suspects the dolls are trying to tell her something about her great-grandparents' murders. Can Amy find the secret the dollhouse holds? Read the book and find out.
Hi, my name is Brent Cobb.
My name is Primus, and we're from Poplar Ridge School.
Our book is The Secret Life of the Underwear Champ by Betty Miles. There was a kid named Larry, and he lived in Connecticut, and he was going to a dentist appointment in New York City because his mom liked that dentist. And it was a windy day, and his hat blew off, so he ran to go get it, and then the Zygmunds came and got him, and the Zygmunds were from a model a model agency. So they went to the Zygmunt's office and they talked about Larry being on a commercial. And then they went back to Connecticut where they lived. And then the next day after school, there were tryouts for his baseball team. And he got picked as one of the good players.
So on their first practice, Larry got an urgent call from the Zygmunt's to be on his first commercial. When he got to but he had to be on his underwear. So after this commercial, he invited his friend over. His friend, while he was in the kitchen, his friend saw him on TV and started laughing. So Larry got mad and sent him home. Then the next day, they had their first baseball game. When he got there, everybody was teasing him and making jokes about him, including the other team. After, in the ninth inning, it was the Larry's team, baseball team, was down by 2 points. And there's 2 guys on base, and he was up to bat. Larry hit a home run and won the game for his team. Then the people no longer teased him or made fun of him. Me and Brent liked this book because we thought it was interesting and
it shows that being in a commercial isn't always that fun.
Hi, my name is Beth. I am in the 4th grade at Indian Mound School. I'd like to tell you about a book, Sadako and the 1,000 Paper Cranes. This story was based on the life of a real girl who lived in Japan. Sadako liked to run fast. On field day at her school, Sadako's relay team won. She had been running very hard, and when she finished, she felt dizzy. She shook her head and it all went away, so Sadako decided not to tell anyone. But every time she ran, she got the dizzy spells again, and to her horror, they got worse. On New Year's Day, Sadako's family visited their shrines. Her mother was wearing her best flowered kimono. I'll give you a kimono as soon as I can, she promised Sadako. Sadako felt great. With the year starting like this, how could anything happen? She soon found out. As Sadako was running in the schoolyard, she felt weak and sat down. Everything whirled around her. Sadako was rushed to the hospital, where she found out she had leukemia. But her friend came to the hospital and brought a paper crane. They decided if Sadako could make 1,000 paper cranes, she would get well. After many days, Sadako made the 644th crane, the last one she ever made. Sadako looked at these birds about her room, then closed her eyes to picture them. She fell asleep and never woke up. Sadako died October 25th, 1955. Her classmates finished making the cranes. They were buried with Sadako. I'd also like to read my favorite part in this book. The next time Sadako awoke, the family was there. Sadako smiled at them. She was part of that warm, loving circle where she would always be. Nothing could ever change that. After reading this book, the students at my school decided to try to make 1,000 paper cranes. We made 3,000. We sent 1,000 to Sadako's monument at the Peace Park in Japan.
Hi, welcome aboard our spaceship. I'm Captain Elaine Brownlesick.
And Commander Allison Pratt. We've rocketed here today to tell you about the wonderful flight to the Mushroom Planet.
It all started with a green ad in the newspaper inviting boys to build a spaceship out of all junk for a flight to an invisible planet. The mysterious Mr. Bass, who wrote the ad, shows the 2 boys who build the rocket, David and Chuck, an invisible planet through his special telescope.
That very night, the boys go on their space flight, taking a canning jar, a coffee urn filled with oxygen, and a chicken named Mrs. Pennyfeather. David and Chuck blast off the planet of the Mushroom People. The boys' mission is to save
them from disaster. Find out how David and Chuck solve the mystery and why the mushroom people no longer have green skin. Read The Wonderful Flight to the Mushroom Planet by Eleanor Cameron and other books in the series of 5.
My book is The Legend of the Bluebonnet by Tommy DePello. The Legend of the Bluebonnet is a book about a little girl named She Who Was Alone, whose people were dying from drought and famine. The shaman went to the hills to ask the great spirits what they were doing wrong. When he returned, he said they were being too selfish and must sacrifice their most treasured possession. That night, She Who Was Alone went to the hills where the shaman had talked to the great spirits. With her, she brought her doll and a torch. Her mother had made the doll for her. Both her mother and her father had died in the drought and famine. Her grandparents had died before she was born. Her doll was the only thing she had to remember them by. Quickly she gathered some twigs and made a fire. Before she could think twice, she threw her doll in. She waited until it died down and threw the ashes to the home of the winds and fell asleep on the hill. Next morning when she woke up, there were beautiful blue flowers everywhere, and later that afternoon it rained. From that day on, She Who Was Alone was known by another name, one who dearly loved her people. Those flowers come back every year because of the sacrifice of this little girl. That's how the Texas Bluebonnets came to be.
Hi, my name is Mark Sroy. I go to Hubert Olson Elementary School in Bloomington. I read the book The Magician's Nephew by C.S. Lewis. It took place long ago. My favorite character was Diggory because he liked to explore just like me. It is about two children named Polly Plummer and Diggory. Polly was quite surprised when Diggory moved into her neighborhood because not many kids ever moved into the neighborhood Polly lived in. Once they got to know each other better, they decided to go exploring through a tunnel that Polly knew about. They decided to see if anybody lived in a house near where they had lived. Somebody did. It was a witch that kidnapped them and kept them, but the two kids escaped, but then were attacked by some animals, an elephant, a bulldog, and a couple of others. But before they were attacked by the animals, they passed through the town of Narnia, which was created by Aslan, who created Narnia and also gave the gift of speech to the animals. Once they got back home, they planted an apple tree in their garden that grew the biggest apples ever.
My book is Indian in the Cupboard. To be a well-liked book, you must have a good author and good literature, and The Indian in the Cupboard is all of this. Lynn Reed Banks writes wonderfully, so you feel you're right in with Omri and his pals. A quote from the back of the book. It would be Omri's secret, precious, dangerous, wonderful, even magical. This not only describes Omri's secret, but the book also. In this book, Omri receives 2 unusual birthday presents that turn out to be magical and fun, but then it turns disastrous. His plastic toys turn real in the magic cupboard with Omri's special key. But then, having real, living, 3-inch people in his room and being able to hide them, they're running all over, fighting each other, bossing Omri around, and it all gets way out of hand. Although the Indian, Little Bear, is Omri's special favorite, he gets fed up even with his bossing. My favorite part was when Little Bear got hurt, and Omri had to bring an army doctor in to take care of him. The soldier was really funny. He thought it was all a dream. I enjoyed the book The Indian in the Cupboard. You surely will too.
Hi, my name is Emily Gilbert from Valley View Elementary School. The book I read was Tuck Everlasting by Natalie Babbitt. It was a really good book. It's all about a family called the Tucks who drink some special water that make them live until the world ends. One day they met a little girl named Winnie Foster who wanted some of that water. The Tucks said she couldn't have any. She insisted because her family owned the forest where the water was. The Tucks still refused but brought her home with them. Then they told her the whole story about the water. She was raised to be a neat child who always put her toys away. But when she saw the Tucks' house, she nearly fainted. It was a pigsty. There were material scraps, wood shavings, and splinters all over the floor. The Tucks' 2 boys were named Jesse and Miles. Jesse was 17 and Miles was 22. Jesse liked Winnie better than anyone. Winnie liked the Tucks even better. She practically loved them. Her parents were scared because Winnie was missing.
A man in a yellow suit thought he saw the Tucks kidnap Winnie. He overheard the Tucks telling Winnie the story about the water. He told her parents that he'd get Winnie back if they'd give him the forest. So he went with a policeman to the Tucks' house. He knocked on the door and told them he heard the story. He grabbed Winnie and took her out the door. Then all of a sudden, Mrs. Tuck said, "Put Winnie down." Mrs. Tuck had a gun in her hand. The man in the yellow suit said, "Don't you dare." Mrs. Tuck said again, "Put her down." He didn't. "Help!" Winnie cried. Then Mrs. Tuck pulled the trigger. Read the book for yourself and find out what happens. I think this book should be chosen as the 4th grade All-Star winner because it stirred my imagination and I couldn't wait to find out what happened at the end.
Hi, I'm Erica Schatzline. I'm a 4th grader for Westwood Elementary School in Bloomington. Have you ever written a famous author? Do you think a famous author would ever write you? Well, that's what happened to the boy in this book. Dear Mr. Henshaw is written by a favorite author of many kids, Beverly Cleary. This book is about a boy named Lee Botts who wrote to an author named Mr. Henshaw. The first time he wrote to Mr. Henshaw, it was thanking him for writing such a good book. The next time he wrote Mr. Henshaw, it was because he had to do a book report on one of Mr. Henshaw's books. In this letter, he asked the author many questions, and Mr. Henshaw wrote back and answered many of those questions. Pretty soon, Lee Botts starts to write to Mr. Henshaw about his life and some of his problems. One of his problems is the divorce of his parents. Over a period of 4 years, Mr. Henshaw and Lee Botts become close friends by writing letters to each other. I recommend this book because it's a good book. It makes you laugh. You get to know the characters and they almost seem real. It's an emotional story and it always lets you know how the characters are feeling.
Hi, I'm Angela Ware. I'm in 4th grade at Indian Mounds Elementary School. I recommend the book Sarah Plain and Tall by Patricia McLaughlin. It was a great book. It won a John Newbery Medal. I'd like to tell you about the book. Caleb doesn't remember Mama, who died the day after he was born, but his older sister Anna says Papa and Mama sing every single day. Now Papa doesn't sing at all. Papa places an ad in the newspaper for a wife and receives an answer from a woman named Sarah, who lives in Maine. Sarah writes, "I will come by train. I will wear a yellow bonnet. I am plain and tall." So Caleb, Anna, and Papa wait. Sarah comes in the spring with her cat, whom she calls Seal, because she is gray like the seals that swim in the sea near her home. Everybody hopes Sarah will stay, but Sarah misses the sea, her brother, and her 3 aunts. When Sarah takes a wagon to town alone, Caleb and Anna are worried that she will not come back. What happens in this story tells much about happiness, hope, and what makes a family. Now I'd like to read my favorite part of this book. Autumn will come, then winter, cold with the wind that blows off the sea in Maine. There will nest of crows to look for, dead flowers all winter long. When there are storms, Papa will stretch a rope from the door to the barn so we do not get lost when we feed the sheep, the cows, and Jack and old Bess, and Sarah's chickens if they aren't living in the house. There will be Sarah's sea, blue and gray and green, hanging on the wall, and songs, old ones and new, and Seal with yellow eyes. There will be Sarah, plain and tall. Once again, I recommend the book Sarah, Plain and Tall by Patricia McLaughlin.
Thanks to Karolyn Lee, Kathy Burns, Phyllis Mattill, and all the students from the Bloomington schools. Thanks are also due to Lois Anderson, Children's Services Librarian at the Oxborough Community Library, for organizing this program. Thank you for joining us on All About Kids. Please tune in again.
This has been a presentation of Hennepin County Library in conjunction with the Twin Cities Metropolitan Library Service Agency. We thank you for watching, and we hope you visit your public library often.